Thank you so much, worship team. As we continue our series, The Comeback, this morning, I wonder if you are here today and you have ever felt like that you have failed God one too many times. Right? I know he said, he's going to forgive, but I just feel like surely there has to be a limit to God's grace. I mean, you don't know what I've done. I have blown it too many times, and I feel like there's just no hope left for me. There's no way that God could possibly use me now after what I've done. Wonder if you've ever felt that way. Maybe you were called into ministry, but you melted down morally, spiritually, or emotionally, and you've settled for another career path or a job, and it's just gnawing at you. Or maybe you were hurting emotionally or under extreme stress, and a pain pill looked like the way to cope, but now you can't figure out a way to face the day without one. Or maybe you just got tired. You felt forsaken and you just quit. I give up. Whatever the case, you're out of the game. You're struggling to hold on. You're wondering, is there really even a comeback for somebody like me? Have you given up the possibility of doing something significant with God, for God? Have you ever felt like, I'm disqualified. I'm disqualified. I think we've all felt that way at times in our lives, myself included, but I'm telling you today that there's hope for every single person in this room today. There's hope. And we're going to find that hope in the last chapter of John's gospel today. Now, if you remember the way that John's gospel begins, the Word was with God and the Word was God. And what does the Word do? The Word takes on human flesh, Jesus, and He comes and He dwells right here among us in our brokenness. He brings light, blazing holy light into this dark world of sin and brokenness. A couple chapters later, Jesus is doing his first miracle at a wedding feast. Then Jesus is talking to a Samaritan woman at the well. You remember we talked about her last week. She was one of those outsiders. You would consider this woman an outsider, yet Jesus is there showing her mercy and grace and forgiveness and offers her. You know who this woman ended up being? The first missionary to her Samaritan village. She runs back to share the good news that she has found the answer. She has found the Messiah. And so many people are saved because of this broken woman, this outsider. A couple chapters later, Jesus is raising the dead. He's healing the sick. He's speaking all kinds of truth, inviting people into this relationship with God, this restored relationship with God through him. Then Jesus gets to the heart and soul of why he's here. He gathers his followers together and he tells them what his life is truly about, what he has come to do. And then Jesus goes and he prays in the Garden of Gethsemane. He's arrested, beaten, deprived of justice. He's crucified. He dies. His body is taken down from the cross and buried in a tomb. Then on the third day, by the power of God, that stone is rolled away and Jesus is alive. He's alive again. He has been raised from the dead. He appears to his stunned followers, even to the doubters. They come and they touch the wounds in his hands and in his side. Even Thomas, he says, I've got to see for myself. And even he, the doubter, is convinced that Jesus is alive. That takes us to the end of chapter 20. Doesn't that seem like a great way to end the Gospel of John? Wow, that's amazing. Jesus is alive. His disciples have seen him. They've witnessed it. We could wrap up the gospel and give a huge ovation to this unfolding story of God and the life of Jesus. It's a perfect ending, but John's gospel doesn't end there in chapter 20. We're going to see today that there's actually John chapter 21. There's another chapter. There's an epilogue to the story. Giglio describes it like this, like watching a movie in the theater, and after the movie ends, y'all have all been there, right? You get up, the credits are rolling, you're walking out, and all of a sudden, another scene pops up, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, right? Marvel, have y'all ever been to a Marvel movie? Marvel became famous from their post-credit scenes. Like you knew never, all right, I'm going to sit here through all the credits because I know there's going to be at least 1, 2, maybe possibly even 3 more scenes that are going to pop up because it's not the end of the story. It's not the end. There's this new plot twist, or we're setting up a different direction or a story in the future. The story is not over yet. This is John. This is John in chapter 21. There's more to the story, and it's good news for all of us here today that there's this last chapter in the book of John. That's because there's still unfinished business at the end of Jesus' time here on earth. And this additional chapter primarily deals with one man who is one of Jesus' disciples, and his name is Peter. Simon Peter. I think if we look at Peter's life, we can find a lot of ourselves in his story, right? He's kind of a foot in mouth kind of guy. How many of y'all are kind of that person? You know, you're just, yeah, a little bit. God, why did I say that? Why did I do that? Like, he's this gung-ho disciple who is really kind of brash and bold and impetuous, and he's probably going to be maybe the biggest personality in any room, oftentimes acting first, right? And then thinking later. Act first, think later. It's no wonder that Jesus kind of noticed him among the 12, and along with James and John, he became one of Jesus' closest disciples and confidants, one of the inner 3 that Jesus would pull away with because they were going to be leaders after he was gone. In fact, Peter is the only disciple willing to step out of the boat and try to walk on water. How many of y'all would have stepped out of the boat, tried to walk on water? Be honest, come on. Come on, Tristan, you're not going to get out of the boat and try to walk on water. Maybe Tristan, right? There's got to be one guy, right, with enough confidence. I trust you, Jesus. I'm going to step out of the boat and I'm going to walk to you on water. He was also the first to call Jesus the Christ. You're the Messiah. You're the Son of God. And Jesus said, the Holy Spirit lets you know that. I think maybe Peter wanted to be like most of these guys, Jesus' favorite, right? Remember when they were arguing over who was going to be the greatest? I think just like all those other guys, Peter was like, you know what? I'm going to be the best among these 12 guys. I'm going to be the greatest, and I'm going to prove to Jesus and everybody else that I can be the guy that Jesus can always count on. We kind of see that happening in his life. Peter made a lot of promises to Jesus. He told Jesus that he was the guy who had what it takes. He could count on Peter's brawn. You can count on my sword. You can count on my zeal. You can count on my dedication. Jesus, I got you. I got your back. You can count on me. Peter even insisted at one point that he would die for Jesus. He looked around at the other guys as if to say, you know, I don't know about the rest of these guys. They might bail on you, Jesus, but I never will. You can count on me. Have you ever said anything similar to God? Jesus, I promise this time that I'm committed. I promise this time that I'm going to stick with you. This time, you can really count on me. This time, I'm going to follow you wholeheartedly. This time, Jesus, I'm not going to mess up. I'm not going to mess up this time. Have you ever made those bold promises to Jesus? Remember what Jesus told Peter, his reaction to his statement. He said, actually, you're going to deny me 3 times before the sun comes up, before the rooster crows. You're going to say that you don't even know me 3 times. And when Jesus predicts this, Peter says proudly, there's no way. Listen to Matthew 26, 34 and 35. Even if I have to die with you, Jesus, I will never disown you. I will never disown you. But we know what happened that very night after Jesus is arrested. Just as he predicted, Peter denies him 3 times. The 3rd time, even calling down oaths from heaven, cursing, and I swear I don't know this man. And the rooster crows. What a moment that must have been. It was a moment where Peter comes face to face with his own frailties. He comes face to face with his own weaknesses. I'm seeing who I am and my weaknesses really close up right here. He saw his sin for what it was, and I don't know about you, but I feel a certain kinship for Peter in this moment, because maybe you are squeaky clean and you have never experienced that crushing feeling of embarrassing yourself and letting down God and even yourself, but I have. And I'm pretty sure most of us here today, we've been there, haven't we? We've let ourselves down, we've let God down. This is where Peter finds himself. I think we all know what it feels like to let Jesus down. We've all made bold promises to Jesus that we've broken. We've all made big commitments to him that we haven't kept. We've all let Jesus down, not once, but many times in our lives. And I think we've all been in that moment when the rooster crows and we come to our senses and realize that we just blew something big time. I can't believe I just did what I did. I can't believe I just said what I said. I can't believe I put myself in this compromising decision. I can't believe I acted this way, crossed a line that I swore I never would. That's why the last chapter of John's Gospel was written. Because Peter needed this chapter, and we need it today. We need it. It's here to show us that big mess-ups do happen. But Jesus doesn't write you off. He's not going to write you off. He doesn't reject us. He doesn't give up on us. Actually, what he does is he comes to us and invites us back into right relationship with him. He comes to us to restore us to himself. The last chapter of John opens on the shores of the Sea of Galilee, and the disciples are all out in a boat, and Jesus is on the beach watching them fish, and they just see a guy off in the distance. They don't know it's Jesus, but he's standing there on the shore watching his disciples fish. Now, what's significant about this location is that this is where Jesus had first met Peter 3 years earlier. And by the last chapter of John, Peter had gone back to the only job he had ever known, and that was catching fish. Now, what was Peter really doing in the boat that day? By going fishing, Peter was really saying, it's over. I'm finished. I'm done. How could Jesus ever use me again. I've blown it too many times. I had my chance at following Christ. I denied him 3 times. He can never use me now. Don't we do the same? When we fall down, what happens? The enemy, the accuser, comes in to attack us, and he says, you've let God down. You've let yourself down. Don't even bother going back to God. He's not going to accept you. He's not going to forgive you. God is fed up with you. You've blown it for the last time. And what do? So often we believe those lies, don't we? We feed into the accuser's lies. The next thing we know, we find ourselves going back to the things that we used to do, the places where we came from. Have you ever whispered to yourself anything like this? I'll just go back to drinking again. I mean, I can't turn to God. He's had enough of my screw-ups. What else do I have? I'll go back to alcohol. Or I'll just go back to this bad relationship. I know it's no good and it's messed up, but God doesn't want me anymore, so where else can I go? I'll just try to find what I'm looking for in the arms of this bad relationship. I'll just go back to my sinful thoughts again. I can't ever seem to get a handle on the problem, and God is surely tired of hearing my excuses by now, all of my promises that I'm going to do better and be better, so I'll just let these thoughts back in like I always do. I'll go back to those old friends, back to that old environment, back to the place I used to hang out, to the people I used to run with. I'll go back to those old coping mechanisms because that's where I've always gone to feel better about myself or to try to numb the pain. And even though I never find fulfillment, and even though I always feel worse there than before, at least it's familiar territory. I'll go back to what I know. When Jesus showed up early in the morning by the shores of Galilee, the disciples had been fishing all night. You know what they had caught? Nothing. Nothing. These are experienced fishermen fishing all night long, and they have caught nothing. Led by Peter, they had, hey God, let's go fishing. Let's go back to what's comfortable. But at the end of the night of returning to their old ways, guess what? All they had to show for it was a long night of nothing. Nothing. Again, have you ever been there? I mean, our culture constantly is telling us what we should do, what we need to do to feel better, to be happy, to find satisfaction. You just need to party harder. Try something different. Try something new. Go further. Then you're going to find what you're looking for. Walk those harmful paths. Push the boundaries. God's just trying to hold out on you. It's all there, what you're looking for. And eventually, if you keep searching hard enough out there, you're going to find it. Just whatever you want to do it. It's glamorized. It's glorified. And the culture is just preaching that message to us every day. You can find it in all the wrong places. And many of us have gone down that road only to find that it's still not fulfilling in the end. Okay, I'm going to go back, and then it's even worse than before. We've just compounded the situation. Only more emptiness and more guilt and more shame. At this point, Jesus calls out to his disciples in the boat. They don't know as him. Verse 5 of chapter 21 says, friends, Jesus shouts out, friends, did you catch any fish? I love the Living Bible. I think a lot of times, we put King James English into Jesus' mouth. Listen to the Living Bible. He says, any fish, boys? right? Isn't that how you and I would say that, right? You see a group of guys in a boat. Hey, any fish, boys? Now, Jesus already knew they hadn't caught any fish. He already knows that they had caught nothing. That returning to their old ways was absolutely fruitless. So he's going to offer these guys a solution. Listen to verse 6. He said, throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some. That's where the fish are. Now, to an experienced group of Galilean fishermen, this has got to sound like an insult, right? Some random guy on the shore, like, who is this guy telling us how to fish? Like, what is he doing? This is an insult. This sounds elementary. You can almost hear the sarcasm coming from the boat. Oh, the right side. I don't think we thought about that. Right? Let's maybe try that. Who knows their motivation? Maybe they're desperate. Maybe they're just hungry because they've been fishing all night. But they do what this guy tells them to do. And they throw their net on the right side of the boat, and boom, so many fish, they can hardly haul the net in. Listen to verse 6. They couldn't haul in the net because there were so many fish in it. It's amazing. Now, let's stay here for a minute because maybe you've been fishing for a long time and have a whole night of nothing. And Jesus is standing before you, and his message is, I know where the fish are. Okay? I know where what you're looking for, where it can be found. I know exactly what you're looking for. I know exactly where you can get it. Jesus says if you're looking for friendship, I know where that is. You're looking for acceptance, I know where that is. If you're looking for meaning in life, I know where that is. I can show you where to find it. You're looking for healing, for significance, for security, for satisfaction. I know where that is. If you'll just listen to me, if you'll trust me. Right now, Jesus is asking you the same question he asked Peter and the disciples. He's looking at the familiar patterns of your life, and he's asking you, how's that working for you? And be honest. Be honest. How your current patterns for living, how's that working for you? Are you finding what you're looking for? Or have you only found emptiness, despair, anxiety, addiction, broken relationships, hopelessness? See, he already knows. He already knows what's happening in your life, and he's giving you the opportunity to recognize the truth of what's happening. And once you do that, once you're willing to admit the truth, then God is able to step in and restore you. You know, we're in a new discipling group on Wednesday nights, and the first step in a few weeks that we're going to be looking at is admitting that there's an issue. Admitting that what's the way that I'm doing life right now, currently, it's not working. It's not working. I have to admit that this is not what I'm trying to find in life. See, as long as we deny our situation, continue to think that we're doing great and it's fun and it's satisfying, that we're still running the show, then we're still actually under the power of the deceiver in our lives. But the moment that we'll speak the truth and answer to Jesus, actually, I don't have anything right now. Actually, I'm miserable. Actually, what I'm doing isn't helping at all. Then Jesus says to us, put your net over there. I know exactly what you're looking for. I know exactly where you can get it. You find what you're looking for when you follow me. Only in me. I love what happens next in the story when the disciples' net is full of fish. John was the first to recognize that it was Jesus on the shore. He said to Peter in verse 7, "It's the Lord. As soon as the net, we can barely haul the fish in, John knows it's got to be Jesus. It's the Lord. Verse 8, when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his tunic, for he had stripped for work, jumped into the water, and headed to shore. Doesn't that sound like Peter? They are 100 yards from shore, and Peter throws his shirt back on because he's taking it off to be able to fish all night, throws on his shirt, dives in the water, and here he is swimming 100 yards to shore. Why did Peter want to get to shore ahead of all the others? I like the possibility offered by Giglio. He said he was still the hard-driving disciple trying to work his way back into the good graces of Jesus. Still that hard-driving disciple. I've got to be first. I've got to be the one that you notice. I've got to be the one that somehow works my way back into your good graces. He was still following his old patterns. It's like he was announcing to Jesus, see those guys in the boat? Even the one that you love, they're not swimming to you, but I am. I'm out here swimming to you. I'm still your guide, Jesus. You can count on me. Was Jesus thinking at this point, Peter, you still don't get it. It's not about you. It's not about you, what you can do for me, but what I have done for you. Isn't that the essence of the gospel? Not what we can do for him, but what he has done for us. Jesus says, you're going to fail me, but I'm never going to fail you. Saving the world doesn't rest on you, it rests on me. When it came to Peter, Jesus was definitely going to trust him to do big things in the future. He was going to be the leader in the church, a rock. But Jesus also knew that Peter wasn't ready for that responsibility until Peter knew that Jesus was the real cornerstone. This church is built on me. I am the true cornerstone. And as long as Peter believed it all depended on him, then Jesus couldn't use him. Peter needed to depend on Jesus first. Isn't this the same truth taught earlier in John's gospel? Jesus said in John 15:5, apart from me, you can do nothing. Apart from me, you can do nothing. I love the way that the Message paraphrases these surrounding verses. It says, when you're joined with me and I with you, the harvest is sure to be abundant. Separated, you can't produce a thing. Anyone who separates from me is dead wood, gathered up and thrown on the bonfire. But if you make yourselves at home with me, and my words are at home in you, if you'll abide in me, you can be sure that whatever you ask will be listened to and acted upon. And this is how God receives all the glory, right? Through us, by working in and through us. Peter needed to understand that truth again. Peter, you went out and did your thing, but that didn't work. Yet, if I just speak one word and I point my finger in one direction and you follow me in my timing and my ways and put the nets down where I say to put the nets down, do you see what happens? The net's full of fish. But you got to do it my way. You got to listen to me, and it's the same invitation today. It's when we fall on our knees and say, Jesus, you're the vine and we're the branches. What do you want me to do? Where do you want me to put down the net? Where do you want me to go? How do you want me to speak? What do you want me to be a part of? Whatever you say, Lord, because that's the best way. Apart from you, I can do nothing. When the disciples made it to shore, Jesus already had breakfast going for them. A fire with some fish on it and some bread. How many of y'all love a good campfire? You just love to be around a campfire at the lake. How many of you have ever been on the beach with a campfire? Yeah, there's got to be nothing better than that, right? Out on the beach with a campfire. That's the scene right now. It's in this environment of gentle wood smoke, of crackling warmth over a meal. Isn't there something just special about a meal, sharing a meal, that Jesus is going to have a conversation with Peter, who has just cursed him and denied him 3 times. What Jesus didn't say was just as important as what he did. Jesus didn't commend Peter on a fantastic swim from the boat. Man, you look like Michael Phelps out there. That was amazing. See, I can always count on you. You're my strong guy, you know. Wow, yes, you're so good. He didn't say that. Jesus didn't chew Peter out immediately for denying him in the high priest's courtyard. I've been waiting for this moment. I cannot believe after what you said, all those promises that you made, look what you did. Let me call you out in front of these other guys, make you look bad, embarrass you, shame you. I can't believe what you did. He didn't do that. Jesus didn't rebuke Peter in any way for failing him. Jesus simply invited Peter to breakfast. Come and share a meal with me by the fire. He does the same for us. No lecture, no condemnation, just provision, acceptance, restored fellowship. Isn't that what Jesus had just died for? It's what Jesus had just died for. And how he's showing us what that looks like in real life. Come and eat with me, Peter. Come and eat by the fire. That, my friends, is mercy and grace on display. It's the gospel when we need it the first time, when we need it the second time, when we need it the 50th time, when we need it the 10,000th time. It's the gospel. It's the good news. I love you. I have plans and a purpose for your life. You look tired. You look scared. You look beat down, exhausted, burned out, like you're about to go under. Would you like some breakfast? Listen to verses 12 and 13. Jesus said, "Now come and have some breakfast." Then Jesus served them the bread and fish. Jesus served his disciples just like he serves us. Now, isn't that amazing? These guys who had just abandoned him, who had all pledged loyalty to him, who had abandoned him and run away in fear, who had denied him 3 times, and he's gonna serve these guys. Can I tell you what this is all about? It's about the disciples and you and me losing this idea that we're going to do anything for God. It's about our accepting that God does everything for us and through us. Come have fellowship with me. Let me provide for you and sustain you for this day to come. I am life and strength for you. I am grace for you, power for you, mercy for you. I'm everything you need. I am the bread. I'm the bread. I'm here. I've got it all prepared. You just need to have fellowship with me. Come and eat with me. Have breakfast with me. The story isn't over yet. After breakfast, Jesus asked Peter some very important questions. Actually, Jesus had only one question for Peter, but he asked it 3 times. And it's a very important question. Do you love me? Do you love me? Most commentators say he asked that question 3 times to mirror Peter's 3 denials from earlier. Let's pick up in verse 15. Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Now again, most scholars and commentators say he was talking about the disciples around the fire with them. Do you love me more than these, more than the applause, more than the recognition, more than comparing yourself with these other guys? And are your eyes fixed on me and focused on me alone, Peter? Do you love me more than these, more than anything else? Yes, Lord, Peter replied. You know I love you. Then feed my lambs, Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord. Peter said, you know I love you. Now, what we need to realize is that in these first couple of verses, Jesus has used the word for love, agape, twice when he's talking to Peter. And both times, Peter has answered with the much lesser form of love, phileo, right? Do you agape me, Peter? Yes, Lord, you know I phileo you. Where is this brash, confident, self-assured Peter from before? Who's willing, yes, Lord, I agape you. I'm ready to do whatever for you, right? Has Peter learned to maybe tone down his responses a little bit? You know I love you. Then take care of my sheep, Jesus said. Verse 17, a third time he asked him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. He said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you, even though I messed up, even though I stepped in it, even though, yes, you know I love you. Jesus said, then feed my sheep. Jesus knew that Peter loved him. Jesus knew that Peter was a work in progress. So why did Jesus ask this question 3 times? We can see the more times Jesus asked the question, the more frustrated Peter became. But again, Jesus didn't want Peter to be confident in Peter anymore. Jesus wanted Peter to be confident in God and to fulfill God's plans for his life. Maybe most importantly, Jesus was telling Peter that he wasn't disqualified because he blew it. He was restoring him. These are the plans that I've had for you all along, Peter. You haven't blown it. You're not too far gone. I still want you to feed my sheep. I want you to preach at Pentecost. I want you to build my church. I want you to fulfill your calling, even lay your life down for these sheep. Isn't that what the Good Shepherd does? They lay their life down for the sheep. I hope you caught what's happening here, because it's what I want for myself, for all of us who've wondered if we're going to have a comeback. We're not out. We're not out. We're not out because the thing we need most is not to be perfect, but to be in a love relationship with Jesus. You don't have to be perfect. He's the only perfect one. But you do have to be in a love relationship with Jesus. Do you love me? Do you love me? Then what I've got for you is restoration and acceptance and the purpose that I've always had for you. Listen, maybe you've made some terrible choices and now you're living with the consequences of those choices. And those consequences are real, but guess what? Grace is more powerful than those consequences. Grace overwhelms those consequences. Even with consequences, there's love and mercy and the grace of God. Jesus says to us, I know you messed up and I know there are consequences, but I want to walk with you through those consequences. I want to love you through the consequences. And I even want to use those consequences in this big story. See, your life is, again, part of my bigger story, and I want to use the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it, even the consequences of what you've done for your good and for my glory in this big salvation story that I'm in control of. You're not too far gone. I still love you, and I want to use you. What you've gone through was actually meant to sift you, to prepare you for what I have for you. See, we need to understand, ultimately, the role of God in our comebacks is about more than just turning situations around in our lives. He does want to do that, but more importantly than that, He wants to transform us from the inside out. He wants our hearts to be transformed in that process. It's through God's grace that our character is forged, our faith is deepened, our purpose even is discovered. I don't know the specifics of your story. Maybe your consequences will be miraculously removed or healed or pardoned or restored or smoothed over. Or maybe your story is that God will use you mightily to speak truth in life to people who are experiencing the same thing that you are, the same consequences that you are. Either way, the good news is that those consequences don't dictate your life. They don't dictate your life. Your failure isn't final. God can still use you to build His church. God's purpose triumphs over your failure. The devil's intentions can never defeat the plan of God. The only way that failure can get the last word in our life is if we choose to let it. We serve a God who is able to take our defeats and missteps and use all of that to bring glory to His name. You're never too far. Again, I love the tagline from this book. You're never too far. It's never too late. His mercies are new every morning. That means that breakfast is served again and again and again and again every morning. His mercies are brand new. I don't know about you, but as we kind of close today, the gospel can sometimes seem too good to be true, right? This just seems too good to be true. How can you take everything I've done and just forgive that and show grace and still use me? How's that even possible? I think a worship song that came out not too long ago by Benjamin William Hastings called "Abandoned" kind of captures beautifully this idea. Let me read a few of those lyrics. He says, something isn't adding up. This wild exchange that you offer us. I gave my worst and you gave your blood? That seems hard to believe. You're telling me you chose the cross? You're telling me that I'm worth that much? Well, if that's the measure of your love, what's my only response to this amazing grace? But completely, deeply, sold out, sincerely abandoned. I'm completely, freely hands to the ceiling, enamored. How could you do this for me? So my one life endeavor is to match your surrender, to mirror not my will, but yours be done. I'm completely, deeply, don't care who sees me, abandoned. I surrender all. I surrender. That's the response to such amazing love and mercy and forgiveness and grace. It's what we saw in the life of Joanna today. Thank you, Jesus. I give you my life. Take me, use me for your glory. My life now belongs to you. I surrender all. All the condemnation already fell on Jesus. All the penalties were removed by Christ at Calvary. All that's left is breakfast on the beach. Restoration, fellowship, the plans and purposes that he has for your life. And Jesus is inviting you today to fulfill that. He's giving you that invitation. Let me pray for you.